Hello everybody and welcome to another barnstorming, exciting, fun-filled episode of Radiorama, where I show you how to work on radios, televisions, stereos, other things that run on glowing vacuum tubes from the 1920s through about the 1960s. And today we have a 1953 Crosley, forgot the model number already, E-10-WE, probably WE stands for the color, white. It's been sitting in my closet for almost 3 years. I don't know why I didn't want to work on it. I think it's because, I don't know, just one of those things. So I don't know if it works or not. We're going to try it out. Either we've got a little bit of wear around. No, I think what's happened, someone has touched up these knobs. It's a pretty good job. It's not a perfect job. It's acceptable. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. This is a typical 5-tube American set. The filaments are glowing. The houses came from the guy didn't really know how to work on the electronics.
Financial stability is a challenge. And to limit access. Him being a hitting.
Well, it works. It means one of two things. Either it means this is going to be a short episode because a lot of the electronics work is already done, or it's not been worked on and it has the original electronics, or what is most of the time common is that the original electrolytics have been replaced sometime in the past and all the original paper caps are still inside. So we're going to find out. I have to be real careful with this. This plastic appears to be real fragile on this tuner here. So I'm going to be real careful taking it off, and I'm going to put it up here where I won't, put stuff down on top of it. And we'll pull the chassis out and we'll see what's going on. Alright, so here is the inside. Nothing remarkable really to write home about. Again, it's a typical American all-American 5-tube set. We have a 35W4 for the rectifier. Let's see what else we got in here. 50C5 for the output. We have a 12AV6 and a 12BE6 and 12BA6. That is the most common lineup you can find when it comes to the miniature tube sets. Looks like all it takes to remove the chassis is these two screws, which I will promptly remove. Actually, they're pretty tight and I can't do this one-handed. But what I'm going to do before I get too carried away is when I pulled the antenna out, it's starting to lift right here. This type of antenna I find is super fragile. If you break any of those, like, it just won't work. And what they did is they stamped that into the cardboard. So as I do, I get my glue gun really hot and I'll just go over this to make sure that it's not going to, it's going to stabilize it. So I'll remove the chassis, apply the glue, and then we're going to take a look underneath and see what story this has to tell me. Alright, so I flipped it over and this is what we got, and it looks like, as far as my guesstimation about what I was going to find here, it was option number 2, which is the electrolytic has been replaced. This, by just the way it looks, I know is a Sprague Adams, or Atom. Very good quality stuff. This is probably from the 1960s, maybe even 70s. You can see on the edge here we've got a little bit of bulging. That means this cap is probably already partially failed. We have two values inside, a 50 and a 30 microfarad cap. It says in those letters MFD, microfarad, 150 volts maximum voltage, which makes sense. Hot chassis running on 110 volts from the factory. And as I have stated numerous times, hot chassis can be a misleading term. This is not a true hot chassis where one end of the power line's going to the chassis directly. It's going through a capacitor. And that capacitor is this guy here. I can't read its value, but it's probably around 0.05 microfarads. I don't care what its value is because we're going to replace that with a safety capacitor, which is rated at 0.01 microfarads and is a different construction and essentially is guaranteed to fail open versus fusing together. And what that'll do is knock down the amount of current that can potentially get to the chassis. Looks like someone used one hell of a soldering iron to put that in there. Look at that. My soldering iron wouldn't touch that. So I'm going to have to probably bend this back and forth or find some way to remove it. And then we're going to replace the two capacitors that are inside this multi-section capacitor with two individual electrolytics. Looks like they were happy to use. These guys came out and it probably saved the manufacturers a lot of time and money. It's a wafer that has multiple components inside. It's either capacitors, resistors, or a combination of the both. I'm guessing because one of these leads goes to the center, the volume control, it's probably 0.01 rated microfarad. Probably not much voltage on that, hardly at all, which was why you can put this into such a teeny little package. I know I'm totally rambling. We also have this cap. This doesn't look like the others. Doesn't mean anything, and maybe Crosley got a good deal on a bunch of those values in that brand. I also find it fascinating that for some reason Crosley was a big fan of using yellow wiring. And so I get a lot of these sets and all the wiring in it, except for something weird like the IF cans or whatever, is just all yellow wiring. I don't know, maybe yellow wiring, maybe yellow coated wire was cheaper. Must be a reason. Maybe it could have been a branding reason. I don't know. So we're going to replace both of these and the grounding cap, and then we'll give it another test fire. It'll probably still work. There's not much to replace here. Pretty simple chassis. All right, I'm going to try this again. I feel like every time I make one of these where I'm trying to get down in there and film it, my hands get in the way, so maybe I won't do it this time. So it's time to remove that electrolytic, which is probably going to be, it's not even attached. Well, that makes my life a lot easier anyway. We're going to cut the wires off the old electrolytic capacitor, and one of the first things I do is I look around to see, well, where are things attached? Here and over there. And where's the negative? Negative is way the heck over there. Now, let's see, what have I got here with my capacitors? Here's one of my new replacement electrolytic capacitors. And will that reach? That'd be awful nice if it did. Yeah, just barely. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some sleeving on that so this won't bounce up against the pins in the tube. And so the way I do that, here's my jury rig way of doing it. Some people say you need to use heat shrink. I don't need to do that. I just have like a roll of wire, and I'll just strip the insulation off of it like so. And oh, come on, get in there. There. So that's one side, and we can come in and first of all get my solder. Come in here and touch up this guy. It's a little solder. And then we'll just come in and solder that like so. Well, let's see, is the camera getting that? Yeah, I guess so. So then the other end, of course, is going to go to the negative. And I want to do the same thing, which is get some wire, strip a little insulation off, and install the sleeve. And then we'll just solder that one in place as well. There we go. Ta-da. Oh crap! It didn't solder. I should have not congratulated myself. Crap. Nothing ever works out when I film it. That's probably why I should. I've been watching this new documentary about Julia Childs, and they're kind of like showing how she kind of pioneered a lot of the film techniques when it comes to doing things on live television. And we just clip those two leads out of there. That's one electrolytic replaced. The other one's going to be a little bit more of a challenge, but no biggie. What we'll do here is I'm going to cut the lead of the positive, which is the one without the stripe. That's the negative. This is the positive. Whoops, just hit the camera. I am going to install the positive, to the positive of this attachment point. Now, where did my... Oh, there they are, my little needle nose pliers. And then we're going to... Oh, I'm such an idiot. Which one was that? Ah, there's this one. And we'll just kind of... That stupid cap's getting in the way. Alright, time to get Mr. Needle Nose pliers out again. And we'll solder that positive in. There we are. Now, all I need to do is run a jumper wire from the negative of this guy to the negative over here, the second cap. And it's kind of like measure out my wire. You want to keep it as short as you can to get from one point to the other. Sometimes just make it a little bit longer, so if you cut too much, you can always trim it. If you don't have enough, then that's no good. And then we'll solder. There's too many rolls of shit sitting around here. We'll put that there like that. And we'll trim that to length. And yes, indeed, I don't need that much. And then we'll just attach this guy to this negative. Come on now. Behave for the audience. Sometimes if you're in a bench, you can just get a glob of soldering on your soldering iron tip. And then just glob it on there. There. So both of our electrolytics are now replaced. And now it is time to replace the Crosley line cap. Let me see if I have, well, not the Crosley line cap, the grounding cap. Shit. I got one of these guys left. I'll have to get some more tomorrow. Anyway, these are called X2 Y2 Crosley line caps. And we're going to replace that guy with this. In fact, let me dig in my tool bag. I'm surely I have some of these floating around somewhere else. Well, I was able to kind of jerry-rig that cap in there. So now we have 3 more capacitors to replace. 0.02 rated microfarad, one that's basically a tenth of a microfarad, and another one that's 0.047 microfarads. So let's get in here and replace the rest of these guys. What is this one? This is the 0.047 one. You see these guys, they're on these fancy schmancy ceramic tubular cases. That doesn't mean anything. It just means it's a paper cap inside of a ceramic tube. Equally as prone to failure, so don't trust them. I'm just going to go ahead and reuse the insulation that was already on there, because it's in fine condition. Well, apparently I put the wrong value capacitor back in the drawer, so probably doesn't matter. 0.068, 0.05, not a huge amount of difference. These radios are not exactly precision instruments in the first place, so it really doesn't matter. Trim both ends here and bend them over. And what I do is I tend to make little loops in the ends of my capacitor, like so. And that way you can loop it around. It's a new connection in the set. Sometimes you have to twist them a little bit to orientate them towards the connection point. I'm about to run out of solder too. I need to make an order for a lot of different things. For one thing, my Metcal tip is starting to wear out a little bit. I'm a pretty heavy user of, well, basically everything, because I work on radios every day of the week. And I get about 2 or 3 months out of a Metcal tip. Told that to one of my friends who works on vintage arcade equipment. He's just shocked at how quickly I go through them. It's like, yeah, well, you're working on like petite little fine detailed things. I'm using this to work on things like radios, the gigantic soldering connection points. It probably doesn't help that I tend to drop my soldering iron on the floor a lot. That probably shortens its life expectancy as well. Alright, so that's what we're going to do for the rest of these. I don't think I'm going to film the rest of that because you guys are probably just about dying from boredom. But there's 2 more. I'm going to replace them both in that same manner. I've already got it flipped upside down. Then I'll, oh yeah, what I also did was I re-glued this stuff down. I know it doesn't look pretty. No one's going to see it. Who cares? But what I do is make sure and get the corners especially. So all that stamped copper stuff is going to be nice and secure. Alright, so it is now fully recapped. Everything's been replaced, and now I'm going to clean the volume control. This is that guy here, and you see there's a little space down in there in between the leads that go into it, so we're going to squirt some juice down in there. Squirt some in the switch too. It'll make sure that everything's real loosened up here. Come on, get in there. There. Don't need much. So now it's time to give it a test, see if it still works. I've got it hooked up to my antenna. Alright. And we're off to the races. Let's see if we still have filament. We do. Luckily I didn't knock any of the tubes out of the sockets, so we'll find out real soon whether or not I caused something to mess up. Whoa.
We have it in the size 6. It's out of stock right now, but we...
Alright, so it works. Next thing I need to do is take it over to my test rig and check for some safety checks. Alright, so what I've done is I've hooked it up to my little rig here. It has a polarity switch on it. And that goes up to my multimeter. Have it set on 2 volts AC. And we're looking for, the maximum is 0.6 of a volt on that scale. So we're going to try it on with the cord flipped in one direction. We're going to touch chassis. That's clearly the neutral side. That is reading very low. So we'll switch polarity. 0.31, so 50% to the max. So we're in very good shape here. That means there's not hardly any current getting to that chassis, which means the shock hazard has been reduced dramatically. So we're doing real well on this set so far. I feel like something horrible has to happen, because usually it's, I don't know, kind of like an old sailor's belief that if something, I don't know, I'm full of shit, don't listen to me. Let me show you guys a little bit of a trick that I learned. I didn't like the fact that the old plug on this is coated in some sort of electrical tape, which makes me think something's wrong with it. So the cord itself is fine. It's real flexible and everything. But I'm going to replace the plug on it with this guy. If you want to make your lives a lot easier when it comes to wrapping braided wires around terminals like that, always dab a little bit of solder on the ends. That keeps everything from fraying. Just a little tip. Hello everybody, welcome to day 2 of working on the Crosley. Anyway, I'm trying to get myself in the mood to complete this set. I'm a little tired. Just spent the whole day out in the car up the coast. And anyway, I was proud of the thing. I went and picked up my parents. I'd cleaned the night before. I was like, we're going to have a nice day out in the country, and we went up there. And I grew up in the country, so I should have known this was a possibility. But there was this rather large trailer. It's probably about a 40, 50, I don't know, 60-foot trailer. And inside were a whole bunch of cows. And it was one of those type of trailers where, you know, there's a whole bunch of slats in the sides and the bottom and everything, so there's lots of air and whatnot for the cows. And we pulled up to a stoplight or something, and we also happened to be getting ready to go up a hill. And this guy starts this truck up the hill, and the crap and pee from however many cows were in there just came sloshing out there like a river all over the street. And so I just completely covered my freshly cleaned car in cow crap, and we drove around like that all day. But whatever, it washed off, so no harm. What I'm going to do now is add an audio input feature, and that is done with a few components, and I'll explain. The first and most important is called the isolation transformer, and it has a primary side and a secondary side. The primary side, if you were to look at the functionality of this, 110 is supposed to come in this way, and 12 volts comes out that way. That's the secondary. And what we're going to do, this is basically going to electrically isolate the user from any potential current, even though what's on here right now is quite low. It's just an extra safety feature, and it'll also improve the audio fidelity. And what we're going to do is we're going to run audio through the secondary, out the primary, and then the primary leads on either side go to either side of the volume pot. And the one side is negative, the other side is the top. The top is where the incoming radio signal comes in, which is most likely this resistor, because it's the only thing attached to that bottom lead there, and that's going to one of these IF cans. The other one, if I look at it, appears to be going to, that's going to a ground. So that's definitely the bottom of the pot. So when I say bottom, it means negative. Top more or less means positive. The signal's going to go in through either side. We'll also need to temporarily clip this resistor lead. And what we're going to do is, well, first of all, confirm that we've killed temporarily the radio signal, and then we will run a little switch wire between here and there, probably at the top or back. Might just go through this existing hole. And that'll be a switch where we can turn the radio off and on. And we will mount this output transformer or isolation transformer as closely as we can to the volume pot. The shorter your leads are, the less potential for having any sort of interference or AC pollution or whatever getting into the audio. Lastly, all of these sets have something called an automatic gain control feature. And so what I want to do is we're going to get a resistor that is about 50% less the resistance of the volume pot. In this case, this is about a 270,000/270K resistor. We're going to couple that with a 0.05 rated cap. It can be a 0.02 or 3. It's not super critical. What this is going to do is create a buffer between the isolation transformer and the volume pot, because we were found this was starting to interfere with the set's AGC, and by putting these two things in series, that eliminates that problem. Lastly, what we're going to do is when we run our audio signal in, which is going to be through a audio cable, and you know what I'm talking about. Let's see if I have one here. I do. See, we've all seen these. They're like headphone jack plugs, and they have a right and a left channel, and then a negative or a ground. We're going to run the right and left channels through either end of 2 resistors, and we'll twist tie the ends together, and that'll be going into the positive direction coming off of basically the secondary audio in. This will go on one of the sides of this, and that will give us true mono. So let's go ahead and install that. I'm committed now. I've got to get this radio done tonight. And first, I just hear the pigeons out there. They better not crap in my car. I think I'm going to go scare them away. All right, well, I got the system installed. This crappy little Chinese Bluetooth thingy quit working, so I'm having to plug my phone in directly to the cord. Let me show you what I did here. So, this is the ISO transformer, and we have the right and left channels of the audio coming in, and that goes to these 2 aforementioned resistors, and then there's the negative. Again, this is the negative of the incoming audio, and that goes basically to the primary side, and the primary has the cap and the resistor that goes to the top of the volume control. The other side goes to the bottom, which is the negative. I've installed a little switch wire that goes through here. I'm going to shorten it. It needs to be short to prevent any sort of radio interference from coming in through the audio. And so I've got my phone running through it right now. This is a switch wire, which is way too long. This will enable us to switch on radio. And so I've got my phone running through it. It's a pretty good sounding radio. You know, most of the time these little speakers are not that great. I'm kind of curious because when I looked at it, there's like some strange coating on it. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's kind of shiny. I'm not sure if that's from the factory or someone sprayed something on it. Doesn't matter, it sounds good. So now that we've gotten all of the electronics completed, I'm going to put it back in the case. I think I'm going to polish the case first before I do that. And then we'll add a switch that'll go through this plywood material, or paper, whatever, cardboard material, and call this one done. Okay, it's off to doing the polish on the radio. And I tell you what, like, the finish on this is already in pretty good shape, so this is going to be a matter of making it even more purty. And what I'm going to use is my good old-fashioned can of McGuire's Carnauba paste wax. I don't like the synthetic stuff. I just can't get the same shine out of it. And so I'm just going to use some old rags. Usually, if you've got old t-shirts or anything like that, I'll hold on to them. And you can use them as wax rags, because I go through quite a few of them. And we'll take your time. You know, if you spend an hour on it, the more time you spend on it, the better it's going to look. So I'm just going to sit here and polish away. And by the way, my parents bought me this beer today at the grocery store, Bear Republic Double IPA. It's very good. Highly recommend it. Okay, so I've been polishing on this guy for about 30 minutes. Let me take it out to the light so it can show just a little bit more what's going on. I have a theory. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but the numbers look suspiciously hand done. It looks like someone very carefully went in here with a brush and redid all that. Now, granted, there's no way in hell I could do that. That would that'd be impossible. There's no way I could do that. It would look horrible. But it doesn't look factory to me. There's something a little puffy looking about the edges here of the gold paint. It looks like modeling paint. And I'm wondering if either this is... See, we've got some convincing deep scratches and stuff. They look like old scratches. I have a theory that perhaps this radio has an original very, very good finish, but perhaps the paint they'd used for the letters, maybe that wasn't as durable and maybe somewhat wore off, and whoever got this might have polished the original paint case up and then applied fresh paint to the numbers. I think that might be possible. In fact, it's actually more obvious when you look at the knobs. And granted, I went to art school, and one of the first things they taught us, well, had us do try to draw a perfect circle. And you know, if you notice any sort of imperfection in a circle, it's way more noticeable. And you can see here how the paint is kind of applied unevenly, and it also has that same sort of modeling paint appearance that's on the case. That said, again, hats off to whoever did this. I think they did a great job. So it does look pretty good. I think I'm going to go ahead and reassemble it, and we'll give a final test / burn in. And I believe we can put this one in the bag. Okay, well, it is now done, and gotta say, it's not my favorite design, but it kind of has a Marilyn Monroe kind of thing going on about it. I'm not sure why, but when I saw this thing, that's exactly the first thing I thought. It looks like a Marilyn Monroe radio. Anyway, it sounds pretty decent. I've got my phone running through it right now.
You evil when I'm with you.
And because the Bluetooth quit working, I have to keep my phone plugged in, but I'll try to demonstrate. When you turn this little switch in the back here, you get radio. Anyway, the audio from my phone is still going through, so that sounds like crap, but you get the idea. It works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the phone and let it run here for about 2 hours. If there's going to be anything that could potentially go wrong, it's going to be because of a thermal breakdown. All the electronics are now inside the case, and those tubes are going to turn the inside of that case to a little oven. And if in 2 hours something doesn't fail, it's probably safe to say it's probably good to put back on the road. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. This is the end of this episode, and if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them down in the comment section below. I'll try to get to them. I know I've not been as good as I used to be, but I'll try. And anyway, if you like this channel, make sure and press that like button. Until the next time some obsolete piece of electronic equipment comes across my workbench, see you guys next time. Adios.